On September 20th, Apple finally released the new premium iPhone 5S alongside the cheaper iPhone 5C. I spent 2 weeks with the latter of the two as my first experience using iOS full-time since 2011. I'm Hayato At from Tech for Geeks, and this is my full review on the iPhone 5C. Now, although the iPhone 5C has been referred to by many as the budget iPhone, that's not really the case. The 5C replaces last year's iPhone 5 in the lineup and packs almost identical specifications. Sealed into the phone's unibody plastic design is the same dual-core 1.3 GHz A6 processor, the same 1GB of DDR2 RAM, the same 8MP iSight camera, and the same 4-inch 1136x640 Retina display as last year's model. The only two changes you'll notice on the spec sheet are the battery, which has been bumped up to 1510 mAh from the iPhone 5's 1440 mAh, and the front-facing camera, which has also seen a slight upgrade. The iPhone 5C supports Wi-Fi 802.11 ABGNN, though sadly no AC support, so if you're thinking about getting the 5C and a fancy new AC router, you'll want to reconsider one of the two. There's also still no NFC support, meaning you still won't be able to make payments with your phone using the newly released Google Wallet app. Don't let that scare you away though, because where the iPhone 5C lacks in support for some newer wireless technologies, it more than delivers in support for LTE. The 5C, and in turn the 5S, both have complete support for all bands of LTE. This means that the same one device is capable of working on any carrier's LTE network in any part of the world, assuming it's unlocked and able to be used on that network in the first place. But if you're in the market for an iPhone, chances are specs probably aren't your thing anyway, so let's just move straight on to the hardware. Now, the hardware is obviously the biggest differentiator between the 5C and its other iPhone brethren. Departing from the high-end aluminum chassis with chamfered edges and an easily scratchable back, Apple has instead reverted to a hard candy plastic shell to house the internals of this device. It's reminiscent of the iPhone 3G and 3GS, though at a much higher quality. This isn't the same slimy, greasy plastic found in most Samsung devices. It feels much nicer in the hand, it's less prone to scratching, and it holds true to Apple's claim of being, quote, beautifully, unapologetically plastic. As always on the iPhone, you'll find a volume rocker and silent switch on the left-hand side of the device, the power button on top, and the iconic home button front and center beneath the display. Sadly, that home button doesn't have Apple's Hot Topic fingerprint scanner, you'll want to look at the 5S for that. And around the back is the Apple logo, an LED flash, and the 8MP iSight camera, which, as I said before, is no different from last year's model. But that's actually great news. If you've ever used the iPhone 5's camera, you'll know what I'm talking about when I say that, like the rest of iOS, it just works. Apple's Viewfinder has always been very minimal, so much so that many people complain of it being too simple. You can't adjust your ISO, white balance, image resolution, and so on, and just about the only control you do have is an HDR toggle, though in iOS 7's new Viewfinder, you can also quickly switch between video and still mode, as well as panorama and square shots. The lack of controls is justified, however, by the iPhone's impeccable ability to figure out all the minor details on its own. Generally speaking, there's no need to adjust metering because the iPhone understands different lighting situations and reacts accordingly. Likewise, you don't need to ramp up the ISO for low-light photography, it just knows what to do. The idea behind the iPhone's camera is simplicity, and it performs extremely well in nearly any situation because of it. I mentioned earlier that the front-facing camera on the 5C received some small tweaks from its predecessor, and that translates to even more excellent shots. Okay, we can't talk about the new iPhone without talking about the new iOS. Now, it's no secret that a lot of people have complained about iOS becoming stale and even stagnant over the years since its release on the original iPhone in 2007. Where the skeuomorphic design language had been helpful in familiarizing us with the iPhone's interface in the past, it's now become gaudy in the presence of cleaner, flatter designs such as Microsoft's modern UI and even Android's Hollow UI. This year, Apple finally aimed to fix that with the super flat, super colorful iOS 7. Despite the new look though, not much has fundamentally changed about iOS. It's still a paginated grid of icons that can be sorted with folders, though not much can be done to customize the interface beyond that. There are some inconsistencies and growing pains in the new iOS, such as being thrown back to the old keyboard when using apps not yet optimized for iOS 7, but it's to be expected with a design overhaul, and the problems will dissipate over time. One of my favorite changes to iOS is the new Multitasking Interface, seemingly taken straight from Palm's WebOS. It's a much faster and more efficient way of managing applications running in the background than previously found, and it really is a great change. Now, most other reviews of the iPhone 5C conflict with my results, but I actually found that the battery performed very well and held up through most days of my testing, even with heavy usage. Most of my time with the 5C was spent on Tweetbot, Safari, and Spotify, though there was the occasional casual gaming with Plants vs. Zombies 2 and Scribblenauts. Taking the phone off of the charger at 9:30 a.m., it lasted me to 11 p.m. or so most days before hitting the red, and I still managed to squeeze a bit of extra juice out of it before it finally died completely. After all of that, it's still not a stretch to say that the iPhone 5C is almost exactly the iPhone 5 rehashed into a different shell, but there's nothing wrong with that. Plenty of people still carry around the iPhone 5, and beyond budgets and contracts, there's a reason for it. Both the iPhone 5 and the 5C are still very capable devices that run an extremely smooth and reliable operating system. Though iOS still isn't as customizable as Android or as clean as Windows Phone, it's by far the most user-friendly. It's simple yet powerful. It does everything that most people need their smartphones to do without throwing all the extra gimmicks in your face. The iPhone remains the perfect smartphone for the average consumer, and if you fit the bill, I'd wholeheartedly recommend the iPhone 5C to you. As for myself, well, I said in my last review that I'm sticking with the Moto X for a while, and I really meant that. But that doesn't mean I don't have my next paycheck reserved for the Retina iPad mini. Well, that wraps up my full review of the iPhone 5C. If you like this video, click the thumbs up icon below to help us out, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Let me know what you think about the iPhone 5C and iOS 7 in general, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. You can also visit our website at techforgeeks.com and follow us on the various social networks linked in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.